My dear listeners, this is an original sci-fi story I wrote for you. If you'd like to support me, just subscribe to the channel, it really helps the growth. The Thrakvel didn't understand the concept of a song. Zoe Clark had learned this early at Research Station Vela 7. The Thrakvel were meticulous record keepers, brilliant engineers, apex hunters, and they communicated in pure data. Facts, measurements, verified observations only. Language was a tool for transferring accurate information. Nothing more. No word for fiction, no category for art, no framework for a sound that existed simply to make you feel something. Zoe's quarters adjoined the communal hub, so when she played guitar in the evenings, everyone heard it. Most species found it pleasant. The Thrakvel found it baffling. Most ignored it. 3 did not. They were cubs, young Thrakvel, all silver-gray scales and enormous amber eyes. Their names translated as Precise Step, Deep Count, and the youngest Soft Echo. They began appearing at Zoe's door, first listening from the corridor, then edging inside when she left it open, then sitting cross-legged on her floor without invitation, watching her hands. What is the function of this activity? Precise Step asked one evening. It doesn't have a function. I do it because it makes me feel better. Better than what? Deep Count asked. Your biological readings are within normal parameters. Better than I felt before I played. Have you ever felt something you couldn't describe in data? Sadness with no cause. Silence. Then Soft Echo, the smallest, said quietly, when my clutch sibling left for the outer station, there was a sensation in my chest cavity. Not pain. Scans showed nothing wrong. But it persisted for 11 days. That's grief, Zoe said. I have a song for that. She played an old lullaby her grandmother had sung, slow and aching, and then finally something like resolution. Soft Echo's inner eyelids had closed halfway. The sensation in my chest cavity has decreased by approximately 40%, Soft Echo said, sounding confused and wondering. Music does that. We're very good at it. They came back every evening. Zoe taught them rhythms, the emotional difference between minor and major keys, the concept of metaphor. The cubs were remarkable students. Their precise minds could hear a melody once and reproduce it exactly, and slowly they began to feel it, or at least to feel something their language had no words for. Then Station Commander Kethrak summoned Zoe to the administrative deck. Kethrak was enormous, 8 feet of muscle and silver scales, status markings running brow to tail. She stood with the stillness of a predator who had never needed to be nervous. You contaminate our young, she said. Non-information, false stories, sounds that carry no data, hours producing nothing measurable. Zoe kept her voice calm. Soft Echo's anxiety response has been measurably lower for 3 weeks. Deep Count's collaborative behavior has improved. I have bioscan records. Anomalies. Kethrak's tail swept the floor. Your kind have always puzzled us. Soft bodies. Slow. Poor sensory range. No natural weapons worth noting. You should not have survived your own world, let alone reached the stars. Maybe you've been looking for the wrong kind of strength. Give me 30 days, Zoe said. I'll teach these cubs music, storytelling, emotional literacy, alongside their standard education. At the end, test them however you choose. If my methods produce nothing, I'll stop permanently. But if you see something real, you admit this is a legitimate discipline. Kethrak considered for a long time, long enough that Zoe's palms began to sweat. 30 days, the commander said. Do not waste them. Zoe didn't. She taught them the structure of narrative, that naming an emotion gave you power over it. She taught them to compose. Precise Step created rhythms of extraordinary complexity. Deep Count wrote melodies mapping solved equations. Soft Echo wrote something that made Zoe set down her guitar and simply listen, a piece about leaving, about the sensation with no Thrakvel name. It was one of the saddest things Zoe had ever heard. You composed grief, Zoe told her. I processed it, Soft Echo said carefully. I had the sensation for 11 days and didn't know what to do with it. Now I've made it into a thing outside myself. It is still there, but it is also out here, and that is, she paused. A relief. Yes, Humans figured that out 40,000 years ago and never stopped. 3 weeks in, disaster struck. The communications array failed. 12 researchers were trapped in the outer ring, unable to coordinate repairs because 2 engineers hadn't spoken in 6 weeks following a professional dispute. For hours of reserve power remained. Zoe was watching the crisis unfold when Soft Echo appeared at her elbow. "We want to try something." The cub held out a data chip. Deep Count had written a conflict protocol, structured, precise, contingencies mapped like a flowchart. But it was fundamentally a human thing. Both parties narrate the dispute from the other's perspective before any technical discussion. Forced empathy with mathematics around it. It took 30 minutes for the protocol to run. Then the 2 estranged engineers were working, not in friendly silence, but in the silence of shared purpose. By hour 2, the array was repaired. Kethrak came to Zoe's quarters on day 29. She stood in the doorway and watched the 3 cubs on the floor with their instruments. A drum Deep Count had built from salvage, tonal tubes Precise Step had tuned to perfect intervals, Zoe's guitar in Soft Echo's small hands. "The communications crisis," the commander said finally. "The cubs developed the protocol. I helped transmit it. It worked because the engineers were willing to speak to each other. They were not before." Kethrak paused. "Your methods changed them. Music does that. Story does that. Shared emotion builds connection faster than any factual exchange. We've known this as long as we've been human. We're not the strongest species, not the fastest. Our senses are mediocre and our bodies fall apart embarrassingly easily. But we're the only species in our home system that ever looked at suffering and thought, I should put this in a song so someone else doesn't feel so alone with it. That impulse built civilization." Kethrak was silent. Then she sat down on the floor, not in the precise hunter's crouch, but cross-legged, the way Zoe sat when she played. "Teach me," the commander said quietly. "The chest cavity sensation. I have carried it for many years. I believed it was a metabolic anomaly." Soft Echo looked up from the guitar. Her inner eyelids closed halfway, the same expression she'd worn the first night Zoe played the lullaby. "We know a song for that," the cub said. 6 months later, the Thrakvel were still themselves, precise, disciplined, devoted to data. But instruments had appeared in the common room. A mural on the corridor wall. Gatherings where anyone could share a story, factual or invented. Precise Step found Zoe one morning before the station woke. "I have been thinking about your species. And you make art about things that hurt you. You turn pain into something others can hold. Your suffering doesn't die with you, it becomes information that travels. Every human who ever hurt and made something from it is still here, still teaching." The cub tilted her head. "You are not just one species. You are a library. Every song is a message from a mind that no longer exists, still transmitting." Zoe felt her throat tighten in a way that meant she was close to crying, which she was not going to do in front of a Thrakvel cub at 6 in the morning. "Yeah," she managed. "That's exactly what we are. It is an extraordinary survival mechanism," Precise Step said. "I understand now why you reached the stars." "We had a lot of feelings to process," Zoe said. "Turns out that's enough."